My name is Andrew, and here are my regrets about moving into a nursing home. Throughout my 84 years, I have experienced life in all its beauty and hardship, gathering wisdom that only time can bestow. I have learned to cherish the small moments, embrace change, and find strength in resilience. However, despite all the choices I've made, some good, some bad, there is one decision that weighs heavily on my heart. I deeply regret moving into a care facility. At the time, it seemed like the best decision. My family encouraged me, assuring me that I would receive all the attention and comfort I needed. I trusted them. But once I arrived, I quickly understood that the reality was completely different from what I had envisioned. I know some of you might be considering this option, either for yourself or a loved one. Perhaps it seems like the safest route, or maybe you've been told it will make everything more manageable. But before you make that commitment, I want to share 9 things I wish someone had told me before I moved in. Because the truth is, living in a nursing home isn't just about convenience. It alters everything. And once you enter, leaving isn't as easy as you might believe. Stay with me until the end. Some of these insights may shock you. And if you know someone thinking about making this transition, this might be exactly what they need to hear before making a decision they can't take back. Regret 1. Losing my independence. The biggest jolt after moving into a nursing home wasn't the compact room, the rigid mealtime schedule, or even the unfamiliar faces. It was the stark realization that I had lost control over my own life. Before I moved in, I had my daily habits. I decided when to wake up, when to eat, and how to spend my time. I could step outside whenever I wanted, prepare my own meals, or simply relax in my favorite chair with a book. But once I was in the facility, I quickly realized my time was no longer mine. Everything ran on a fixed schedule, one that I did not create. Breakfast was served at a specific time, even if I wasn't hungry. Lights went out at an assigned hour, regardless of whether I was ready for bed. Want to step outside? You'll likely need approval, and you may have to wait for assistance. Decisions that were once automatic, like what to eat or even what to wear, suddenly felt like privileges rather than choices. I remember my first week there, waking up in an unfamiliar bed. I sat up, stretched, and reached for my novel, something I always did at home. But when I looked around the room, it sank in. This wasn't my home anymore. My books, my favorite chair, the small comforts I had gathered over the years were gone. In their place, sterile walls, a bed I never selected, and a feeling of helplessness. I was no longer the one steering my own life. The most painful part? Once you give up your independence, reclaiming it is nearly impossible. You don't realize how valuable freedom is until it's taken from you. Then every small decision, when to eat, when to sleep, when to walk outside, becomes someone else's choice. If you're contemplating a nursing home, ask yourself, are you prepared to let go of the small freedoms that define your life? Because once they're gone, you'll miss them more than you ever expected. Regret 2. Feeling forgotten. One of the toughest realities about moving into a nursing home is understanding that the outside world keeps moving without you. When I first arrived, my family promised they would visit often. I trusted their words, and at first they followed through. My son stopped by every weekend. My grandchildren came over after school. For a while, it felt like I still had a connection to my past life. But over time, the visits grew fewer and fewer. Calls replaced visits. My grandchildren got wrapped up in school and work. Holidays were the loneliest. Everyone swore they'd come, but at the last moment, plans would change. And there I was, alone in a shared room, staring at the door, hoping today was the day someone would walk through it. I remember sitting with my phone in my hands, debating whether to call my daughter. I didn't want to feel like a burden. I didn't want to remind her that I was still here, waiting. So I put the phone down, and that's when it truly hit me. This was my life now, sitting, waiting, hoping. If you want to know how much people really care, become dependent on their time. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, can you handle the possibility of being forgotten? Because no matter how much your family loves you, once you're out of sight, you'll be out of mind. Regret 3. Losing my sense of purpose. When I moved into the nursing home, I thought I was just changing where I lived. I didn't realize I was also changing why I lived. At home, I had responsibilities. I had routines. I had a reason to wake up in the morning. Even the smallest tasks, watering the plants, brewing my morning coffee, folding the laundry, gave my days meaning. But inside the facility, those routines vanished. Meals were prepared for me. Cleaning was handled by staff. Even the plants, well, they weren't mine anymore. At first, I told myself, maybe this is good. No more chores, no more obligations, just rest. But within weeks, something felt wrong. The days dragged. There was nothing to anticipate, nothing to accomplish. I saw it in others too. People who once had passions, careers, hobbies, now sat in silence, staring at the walls. There was a man named Richard, 85 years old, who had been a talented painter all his life. At home, he spent hours creating beautiful landscapes. But in the nursing home, there was no space for art supplies. No canvas, no colors. One afternoon, I saw him staring at his hands. When I asked what was wrong, he simply said, "I don't know what to do with them anymore." And I knew exactly what he meant. When a person loses their purpose, they start losing themselves. It's not age that makes people wither away. It's the loss of feeling needed. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, what makes your life meaningful? Because once you step inside, finding purpose isn't as simple as filling your time. It's about holding on to the things that make you feel alive. Regret 4. Watching my health decline faster than expected. Before I moved into this care facility, I was managing well for my age. I wasn't climbing mountains, but I could still cook, clean, and go for walks without difficulty. I had routines that kept me active, grocery shopping, stretching in the morning, even tending to my garden. But once I settled in, everything shifted faster than I imagined. At first, it seemed harmless. Meals were delivered, so I didn't have to stand in the kitchen. If I needed help, I could just press a button. It felt like a small luxury. What I didn't realize was that the less I did for myself, the weaker I became. Before long, I noticed my legs felt stiffer. I sat for extended periods, moving less and less. Soon, getting up from a chair started to feel like a chore, and I wasn't the only one. I watched Margaret, a woman who once walked the hallways daily, begin using a cane, then a walker, then a wheelchair. One day, she looked at me and whispered, "I don't know when it happened, but I feel like I aged 10 years in just 6 months." And that's exactly what it felt like. The body adapts to stillness just as much as it adapts to movement. Use it or lose it. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, will you still have the motivation to keep moving when everything is designed to make life effortless? Because once you slow down, getting back up isn't easy. Regret 5. Losing my privacy and dignity. One thing I never considered before moving here was how much privacy I would have to give up. At home, I had my space. I could shut my bedroom door, sit quietly if I wanted, and control my personal life. But in a nursing home, privacy is a rare luxury. From the moment I arrived, I felt like I was under constant supervision. Staff members entered and exited my room at all hours. Shared living spaces meant I was rarely alone. Even basic acts like getting dressed or using the bathroom often required assistance. I know the caregivers meant well, but it was still humiliating to have to ask permission for things I had done independently for decades. I remember one morning, trying to take a shower. I was told I had to wait until an aide was available. When they finally arrived, I felt like a child being supervised for something as basic as bathing. Dignity is not a privilege, it is a right. But when you need help with everything, even dignity starts to feel like something you have to ask for. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you prepared to lose the privacy and independence you've had your entire life? Because once it's gone, it's almost impossible to get back. Regret 6. Realizing how hard it is to leave. When I first moved in, I told myself, this is temporary. I thought I'd try it for a while, see how it went, and if I didn't like it, I could always go back home. But I had no idea how difficult leaving would actually be. At first, it seemed simple. If I wanted to leave, I'd just go home. But home wasn't the same anymore. My house had been sitting empty. Bills were piling up. My family had already started selling my belongings, convinced I wouldn't need them anymore. And then there was my own physical decline. After months of being in a place where I didn't have to cook, clean, or even walk much, I realized I wasn't as strong as I used to be. The independence I once had began slipping away, making the idea of returning home far more complicated than I had imagined. I met others who had the same experience. They had entered thinking it was a temporary stay, only to realize that leaving wasn't an option anymore. For some, their homes had been sold. Their savings had been drained by nursing home costs. They had nowhere to go. I remember a man named Frank who had been a strong-willed veteran. One day, he looked at me and said, "They told me I could leave whenever I wanted, but they never told me how hard it would be to leave once I stopped being the man who walked in." If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you prepared for the possibility that once you go in, leaving may not be as easy as you think? Because the longer you stay, the harder it is to get out. Regret 7. Being surrounded by sickness and death. Living in a nursing home means constantly being surrounded by people who are sick, frail, and eventually dying. When I first moved in, I didn't think much about it. But after a few months, I realized something heartbreaking. The people I spoke to every day, the ones I had lunch with, played cards with, were disappearing. One week, I'd be sitting across from a friend in the dining hall. The next, their seat would be empty. Some passed away quietly in their rooms. Others were taken to the hospital and never came back. It wasn't just death, it was the slow decline before it. I watched people who once walked stop walking. I saw those who were independent become dependent. And then one day I caught my own reflection in the mirror and thought, am I next? Nothing makes you confront your own mortality faster than watching the people around you fade away, one by one. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you emotionally prepared to live in an environment where loss is a part of daily life? Because seeing others disappear makes you feel like you're disappearing too. Looking back, I don't regret aging, but I do regret believing that a nursing home was my only option. I walked in expecting comfort, safety, and peace. What I found instead was a world that slowly took away my independence, my privacy, my purpose, and even my sense of self. Does this mean all nursing homes are bad? Not necessarily. Some people genuinely need the level of care they provide. But before you make this decision, think carefully about what you're giving up. Because once you enter, life will never be the same. If I could go back, I would have fought harder to stay in my own home, explored more alternatives before making this choice, ensured I truly needed to be here before making such a permanent move. And if you're facing this decision, I hope you take a moment to ask yourself, is this really what's best for me? Or is it just the easiest option right now? Because the life you have today, your routines, your independence, your choices, is worth holding on to for as long as you possibly can. What do you think? Have you or a loved one experienced life in a nursing home? Do you think it's the right decision, or do you have regrets? What would you do differently? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and share your perspective. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us continue creating content that informs and inspires. Thank you for reading. Take care and stay strong. Thank you.